Hello, everybody. Welcome into my latest live broadcast. Today is Thursday, the 7th of May, 2020. My name is CareyHolzman. Thanks for joining me today. I've got a little side project here that, sometimes I just need to do something different. Sometimes, amongst all of the responsibilities and expectations that others have for me, I need to break away from it for a short period to do something differently. And that being said, I have stumbled on a computer case that looked interesting to me, and it's right behind me here. It's this ThermalTake glass case intended to be, I don't know, kind of a showpiece, a showcase case. A showcase case? A showcase. And it's a microatx where the board's going to sit on the shelf here. It's modular, meaning the panels can be all moved around, and I don't know what you'd want to. I guess you can even take the buttons and, the USB ports up here on the top. Then you can move them off to the side and rotate everything sideways. Again, I'm not sure why you'd want to, but you can. For $100. And it looks like maybe not the perfect case with regards to airflow, but not bad either. There's a big fan right up here, as you can see. And there's already a great review on this case over at Gamers Nexus channel, so I'm not going to just reinvent the wheel. He's already done a great job over there. So I'm just going to build in it. Now, there's a lot of features in this case that we're simply not going to show off during this video because I honestly don't have any interest in it. What I'm looking to do with the case is just build something a little different. And I need your input on that. I don't know. I've got some parts in the back here. I don't know if I should build, like I got that AMD Ryzen 5 3600 left over. And I've got a couple of Intel i7s. I've got the 9700, 9700F, which doesn't have the graphics card. I've got an i5 back there. The i5s I think I'm going to use for the Kids at Hope charity builds. So this one, I don't know what I'm going to do with this yet. Maybe somebody out there watching this video will want to buy it from me. I just wanted to put together something different. And it's not going to be filled with RGB, despite the fact that clearly it's designed for that. I just want to use some parts. I've got brand new parts. I've got RAM, I've got solid state drives. And I just want to put something together because it looks like it'll be super easy. It'll be very different from anything I've done before. And that helps keep me interested, from doing the same old thing every day. And just for comparison's sake, I've got the other build here that I did for my friend Ron here. And this is the mini ITX. And this is pretty big for a mini ITX case, but just to give you some form of comparison as to just how big this is and how wide it is. Again, instead of the motherboard sitting vertically in it, the motherboard's going to sit flat right here, and the power supply will go on underneath of it. And that's pretty much the build. I mean, it looks pretty straightforward to build in. A couple of thumb screws here to remove panels. It looks like your I/O shield cutouts right here, right above your power supply, which is very unusual for the layout. Again, we've got this trend in putting a bracket on the outside of the case to secure the PCI cards is something I despise. I think anytime a case manufacturer has to do that, they've made the case too short. And I don't understand the benefit of that. I think the screws that secure the inner components should be secured with the panels to prevent somebody from messing around with it. So I don't like any time the screws for internal components have to be secured on the outside of the case. I think it's bad engineering. Now, again, it's not a bad, from what I can tell, it's not a bad case for all this glass. You've got 4 glass panels on this for $99 with a great big old fan here in the front. No fan in the back, so if you want to add another fan, it looks like you can put a 140 millimeter back there. Still has room for liquid cooling tubes and brackets you can adjust up here to accommodate practically any size radiator. None of that does me any good. So, I don't know. What do you guys think I should do? Let's take a vote. We can do Core i7 9700 in a microatx gigabyte board, or the Ryzen 3600 in a B450 board. Speak now. What you guys say in the chat, what I see overwhelmingly in the chat is what I'm going to build. That's why there's no parts out right now. Those two computers back in the corner, those are the dual mics. Remember back in January? So those, I laugh about it. It's really terrible for somebody to have to wait that long. But those are finally going to ship tomorrow. So that's the last time you're going to see them, those two back there. And then those are the two I've got waiting the longest. And I'm sure nothing drives people crazier than going, why is he starting something new when he hasn't finished other things he started? There were lots of reasons. There's a lot of reasons. But be that as it may, do know that some customers have had to wait an extraordinarily long time. And the reason I mention it isn't to embarrass myself, but to stress how much work I've got. Clearly, I'm not sitting around staring at them with nothing else better to do. And it's just a time management issue. And so I've had there was only 7 days so far this month. In 7 days, I've had 4 new build requests, and I've turned down the vast majority of them. Some of them are quite complex. They're not easy builds. If somebody's got a super easy build, some standard, like the 8-year build I did, the system that'll last for at least 8 years, that system's super easy to put together, and I could take that on. But somebody who wants something very specialized and they want to control, I need this and I need that, and I'm like, I can't do it right now because otherwise it'll sit here for 5 months. I promise you. Nobody wants that. I don't want it like that. The customer doesn't want it like that. So I'm hoping those of you, looking to build something or have me build something super fancy for you can be patient and perhaps wait till about the fall, and things will hopefully normalize by the fall. At this point right now, unless I get some help, nothing's changing. Everything's backed up. A lot of people saying Ryzen 3600 here in the chat room. Bill wants to know, is it normal the GTX 1050 fan doesn't spin? It'll spin when the card needs it. In other words, if it's not running hot, the fan doesn't spin. So if you run a graphics demo like the Heaven benchmark on it, when the Heaven benchmark is running, at some point the card should heat up to the point that the fans would kick on to cool it down. Fan or fans, depending on which card you've got. John Wilson, a frequent contributor here and a proud to call my friend, has just contributed $20 in the chat. He says, I hope all is doing good with all this crazy stuff going on. Be safe, y'all. Right on. Everything's fine. Just busy, busy, busy. I saw my FedEx folks for the first time over a month, and they weren't wearing masks or gloves or anything, so that's a good sign. So I'm ready to get back to shipping again. Got Marty's computer is going to be built by Anthony Remus. All those parts got shipped out to Anthony in Las Vegas. Anthony's going to build that and then ship it back to me, and I'm going to review Anthony's work. And Marty's already contacted me telling me he wants a 10th gen chip. Well, the 10th gen Intel chips came out with the new socket 1200 motherboards. And I'm advising Marty to just hold off about 3 months. I don't advise jumping into some brand new chip, although it's really the same old chip that's been modified a bit. It's a new socket type and a new motherboard chipset, and that's where I'm a little bit leery. However, we do have the other system, the Intel Core i9 9900KS with a 2080 Ti blower style graphics card that Anthony is assembling, slightly overclocked for Marty, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes. It'll be in the Define Fractal Design Meshify C case, just plain black, no window. And Marty did want something different, so I think he's going to be very happy with it. And then once he gets that one, if he still wants to do another one, what am I going to do? Say no? Jeremy Kramer has contributed $20. He says, Carey, great idea to ask us to choose the processor. If you had a full free day to build a PC, how many could you build in an 8-hour workday? Well, if I'm doing everything myself, 1 day is not enough to do the whole build because the software installation and configuration and all the little minutiae I check, from power options to all the little settings, to throwing on VLC and going through the installed programs and removing all the games, That, all the Windows updates, the activation, that in and of itself, just doing the software config is about 4 hours. And then when you compare, when you add that to the time it takes to build the system, you're looking at probably easily 2 hours, I would say. And then when you're going to do the cable management, you can throw another hour on top of that. So you're already at 7 hours if I'm moving pretty quickly. Now, if there's an assembly line or something, or if I'm building something like an Intel NUC, I can build those about one every 20 minutes, but it's still going to be the same 3-4 hours getting the software configured. So I'm not really interested in building quickly. I'm interested in enjoying my time building and in doing it right. I don't care if people are impressed or not impressed by how long it takes me. What I care about is whether or not I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and that I'm doing it right, and that my customer is happy. So unless you're my customer, I really don't care. But it's interesting to me that people gauge that, like this idea that somehow building it faster implies you have more skill. I'm not as fast as I used to be. I don't have as much energy as I used to have. And the process of doing this, I've built somewhere between, I think I calculated between 20 and 30,000 computers. We were building, when I worked at a couple of the computer factories where we were building machines, we were building, I think, 40 or 50 or 60 a day. And we were doing that 6 days a week. Might have been more, but I'm going to be conservative on this. And of those, when I was building, I could slap together. Remember, it was an assembly line, so I didn't have to do any of the software. All I had to do was slap it together and move it down the line. And those, I would say anywhere from 3 to 10 on any given day that I would personally do. So you do that 5 days a week, 52 weeks a year. I really didn't get any vacation. And you do that over a period of years, and the numbers add up very, very quickly. And then when you add into the repairs and the disassemblies and upgrades and that and the other, I'm kind of combining it all over nearly 30 years. So a lot of this, even though the cases may be different and some of the parts have evolved, it's pretty much the same job I was doing. Very little has changed in all this time. And it's why I make these videos, to show how easy it is. I'm afraid if we turn this into how fast I can do it, it's going to turn off a lot of people who said, oh, I thought he said it was easy, but he went way too quickly for me to understand. And they may never get another chance to have those people's attention, to have them consider that they can do this themselves. Nothing bothers me more than watching one of these cooking shows, and they go through the ingredients so quickly, I can't keep up. I can't follow along. So I don't want to do that. I appreciate the question. I was in second place by, I don't know, half a second or some ridiculous thing at the PC building contest at the Consumer Electronics Show. But who cares? How will the system get air in that case? Well, there are gaps. Right here, there's a gap. And the air is going to go right into that gap right there. And there's a gap right up here, as you can see. So no problem. It'll breathe. Air will come out here. And the air is going to be drawn in from the top and from the front. No differently than a lot of other cases. Now, they could have, as Gamers Nexus suggested, put some ventilation holes down these pillars. And he thinks that probably would have let it breathe a little easier, and it wouldn't even look bad if they did it right. And I agree with him. I think Steve's got a point there. But this isn't really about airflow. This isn't about that. Like, you're not getting the point of this. The point of this is to be on show. It's to be pretty. It's not to be smart. It's not to be particularly useful other than its purpose, which is to be aesthetically pleasing to the eye and to draw the attention of the eye. That is why it exists. So when we have cases built to a certain purpose, there does tend to be a certain fraction of the audience who doesn't understand that. They don't grasp the concept. Certain cases are designed to meet certain needs, just as you can buy tennis shoes, CrossFit shoes, hiking shoes, cleats, slippers, flip-flops. These all serve different purposes, and to suggest an improvement on a flip-flop to make it more like a tennis shoe, you're missing the point of the flip-flop, of the sandal. So I'm trying to bring the point across to that fraction of the audience who's not getting this, that it's okay if you don't get it. It's not for you. It's for other people. And you can accept that, and yours will not be for them. So I can assure you that ThermalTake did not design a case that's going to overheat. But could they have improved it? Clearly they could have improved it. Is it necessary? No. They decided at some point that the aesthetics were more important, were the most important priority in this case design, and that's where the engineering team clearly focused their efforts. And there's a couple other little things. The modular part of the case, the modular function of being able to flip things around and backwards and upside down, appeals to somebody somewhere. But that was also a very high priority in this case design. I don't know where airflow fell on the priority list, but it ain't in the top 2. But it's not going to be a problem. The air consideration would be mostly an issue for people that are pushing their systems beyond the way the parts were engineered. So, in other words, overclocking. Now, the case does have room and the option for a open loop liquid cooler, which would imply it's designed for overclocking, which you would think would have better airflow. I agree with you on that point. However, it'll still get the job done. Even if it's not going to get it done as best, it'll get it done acceptably. It'll still work. So that's my thoughts on that. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for the contributions, guys. Did I mention that 50-pound contribution? That's a big contribution. Let me go back and look that up. Where was that? Ryan Farmer contributed 50 pounds. He says, stay safe, you guys, over the pond. Thank you, Ryan. That's a very generous contribution. I appreciate that. The Republic of Dave wants to know if I have any 10th gen builds on the horizon. Not at this time. Nobody has ordered one. Randall Hill says, damn, Carey, you look terrible. This ain't a fashion show, man. I don't know what you're expecting, but that's my face. Good to see you too. Jeez. Paul says, I've got that quarantine look. Yeah, well, I wonder why. Can you build and ship during COVID? I can now. Yes. It was a little touch and go the first couple weeks. But yeah, I can do that now. Everything looks pretty good over at FedEx now. They've reduced their hours. If I don't get it out of here by 6 o'clock, I used to be able to go there later at night, get out of the heat, get away from the crowd of people getting home from work and picking up and dropping off packages at FedEx. So they used to close at 9 o'clock at night, so I would get there about 8 o'clock. Now they close at 6. So I've got to get it done during regular hours, but nothing else changes. Delivery times are still the same. Got a fly in here. Martin says, thanks for your videos. I'm learning a lot from you doing your videos and lectures. Cool. Thank you. Danny says I should come up with a vaccine for COVID-19. Yeah, I wouldn't have to listen to people tell me how terrible I look if I was holding a needle with a vaccine in it. I bet they'd have nothing but compliments for me. I know Randall was just giving me a hard time, but you know, you can get a hard time back. Don't dish it out if you can't take it. Am I going to put in some RGB items? No, I don't have any plans to put in any RGB. That doesn't mean I won't. I just don't have any plans to. I think the front fan on here is RGB, and that's enough as far as I'm concerned. Carey, when's the pizza making? When I can get some room in my kitchen to cook. I'd love to go back to showing you guys a couple of modifications I've made to some of the previous postings I've done. Little evolutions taking place there. It's Tech Time has contributed $2 and says I got a few computers to fix and a pressure washer. Carey, can you fit a disco ball and a lava lamp in that case? Maybe. So what did we decide on, guys? Did we go Ryzen or Intel? Ryzen or Intel? I see a lot of Ryzen. Well, Rayleigh saying Ryzen over and over and over doesn't count as like a bunch of Ryzens. What, you know, once you say it the first time, that's your vote, man. Techman wants the Ryzen. Edward wants the Intel. Paul wants the Ryzen. Kenny wants the Intel. Daniel wants the Ryzen. Wesley wants the Intel. We're like 50-50 here. Armand and Martin want the Ryzen. Tixeld wants the Ryzen. Ron wants the Ryzen. Paul is sick and tired of hearing about AMD and Ryzen. John wants the Ryzen. Wonder Woman says the Core i9. I'm not going to put the Core i9 in this. No. I have an i7. I have a couple i7 9700s, but the i9 9900 is going to be used for something else. But it looks like I can't go wrong no matter which one I pick, huh? Half of you are going to be happy and half of you are going to feel like I didn't listen to you. Carey, has your business took much of a hit with what's been going on? Yes. Yes. My business went from busy to, oh my God, how do I make this thing stop? Well, the news and the media are focusing on a lot of service restaurants, service industries like restaurants and, businesses that require people all being together in one place, like sporting events and things like that. The demand for tech has gone up, I would say quadrupled what it was. And there's all kinds of tech jobs going on in Phoenix right now. They cannot hire enough people. So the tech sector is busier now than I can ever recall it was, except maybe during Y2K. Things were crazy like this during Y2K. But there's no shortage of work here. If you're a tech and you're not working, then you don't want to work. Carey, did you do any more testing with the Gigabyte NVMe solid state drive that you had problems with on the last build? Wayne, no, I haven't gotten back to it yet. It's on my to-do list. Jason Baums contributed $4.99 and says it looks like a fun case. I agree. I think it does look good. We're just all over the place on these suggestions. It is almost 50-50 Intel versus Ryzen on this build. Carey, have you had issues getting items from Amazon? Yes. Yeah, depends what the item is. I ordered a blender. It took a month to get here. But other stuff arrives in days. Some stuff arrives same day. But I've never had to wait this long for other items. But in all fairness, Amazon says I've ordered 215 items in the last 6 months. So I might be ordering more than the average person. I've got parts coming in for the computer build I'm going to do with Steve Bass. He and I are going to build the same computer together virtually online. Well, not virtually, but what do you want to call that? He'll be in California, I'm in Arizona, and together we're going to put together the same part. I'm going to show him, then he's going to do it until we both have both of our computers, which are perfectly identical, built together, including installing Windows 10. Steve is not a system builder, so this should be fun. And those parts, I think, will be here by the 15th. So today's the 7th. Normally with Amazon, I get stuff within 2 or 3 days, and you can see that's going to take upwards of 8 days before we get all the parts. Something's being held. I can't remember what it was. Intel, AMD's already selling pre-orders for their new Ryzen 3 3000 chip, or 3000 series chip. Amazon's taking pre-orders for $120, which is the retail price. Of course, there's no motherboard out yet. Motherboard may not be out till June, but those motherboards won't be backwards compatible. So you'll have to, if you're getting a Ryzen 3000, you won't be able to put an earlier Ryzen on those new boards. And this Ryzen 3 3200 for $120 is 4 cores with 8 threads. And it's supposed to be on par with Intel's 4-core, 8-thread i7 4770, I think. Like it's on par with that. But instead of $350, it's $120. Back when that chip was, when the 4770 was out. According to some of the reviews I've read. So I pre-ordered one for the sake of experimentation. I generally avoid the 3 series processors from AMD and Intel. But I thought, it's $120, might make an interesting video. I wouldn't sell it to a customer. I would have to test it for a while. So I'm not advising anybody buy this unless you're a pioneer and you like experimenting and being the first one to have problems and having to wait for those problems to get addressed. I would not buy into new technology. But it can make for a good video that gets a lot of views and makes me money. For $120, I thought, what the hell, I'll pull the trigger on it. I figure worst case scenario, I'll give it to charity Kids at Hope. It'll be a good machine, I think. If it's as good as an i7 4770, it should be great for office work. Though it doesn't have any built-in graphics card. That's the downside. So the money you're saving on the chip, you'll have to invest in some kind of a GPU, which then makes it more expensive. So apparently, if you want a game, which means you're going to be getting a graphics card anyway, this may be a very inexpensive chip for gaming. Have I seen a petabyte in a computer yet? No, I've not seen a computer with that much storage. I've seen servers with that much storage, but not the... Oh, Patrick's correcting me, not the 4770, the 7700K from Intel. So the Ryzen 3 3200 is on par with the Ryzen 3 3200 is on par with the Intel 7700K. Thank you for the correction, Patrick. It's hard to keep all this stuff sorted in my head. Are there any motherboard manufacturers in the United States? Not that I'm aware of. I don't think there's any electronics manufacturers in the United States. I'm not aware of any televisions, routers, network switches. As far as I know, they can engineer them here, but they get contracted out to factories for fabrication and building. Now, Intel does have fabrication plants here for their chips, but they also have those plants in other countries around the world. So just because you're buying an Intel chip doesn't mean you got one made here. Only certain chips are made here. Mark Stevens has contributed $10. Hey, thank you, Mark. I imagine there's probably some other electronics I'm not thinking about, but I'd say probably 80% of electronics are manufactured in Asia. So we got 541 people watching live right now. Welcome in, everybody. Catherine says there's a 3300 and a 3100 or the 3200G. Well, which one did I order? I don't even know. I just did it. I can't even. All these numbers, when you deal with the megahertz, the cores, the threads, and then the model number, and then you combine that with all the pre-existing ones, and now here's a new one. I'm just getting old, and I can't retain this stuff as much as I used to be able to. So the Ryzen 3 3200G is a 4-core unlocked desktop processor with built-in graphics for $91.97. What I'm looking at was the, I think it's the Ryzen 3, 3300. I think it's a 3300. It's $120. That's whatever one is $120. For some reason I thought it was a different number, but what do I know? And it was a pre-order status. I can't find it right now. It's there somewhere. Like I said, there's no motherboards for it out. So it'll be interesting if I get the chip and then I have to wait for a motherboard to get released. And it's all going to be PCI Express 4 on these motherboards as well. Patrick says, I don't know how you keep up with all this stuff. Well, for the most part, I'm always consuming information. And then the question is how much of it I retain with detail. Like I know the gist of it, and then when I have to explain it and sort of parrot back out what I've read or what I've seen, unless it's just something I did 5 minutes ago, the more time passes, the more the gaps fill in until I get some hands-on experience and start really working with it. And then I get to know it intimately. And then, of course, I remember it then. Photo Mix Media says, I have missed some live streams. Was there anything done to give a token of gratitude to Catherine Anna Hauserman? Yes, Catherine is adding a PayPal tip jar. So anytime that you were to reach out to her for assistance, ideally when she sends you back your parts list, she'll include a link that says, you know, here's Catherine's tip jar. Catherine really didn't want to do it. She didn't feel right about it. And I said, look, Catherine, you know, quite often people want to give you something, but you've made it impossible for them to give you anything. So by not asking for anything, you're still not asking. You're just putting a link there, and if they want to click it, they can click it, and if they don't, they're under no obligation. And then she was like, okay, yeah, I guess that's reasonable. So as far as I know, Catherine did that, but you'll have to talk to Catherine with what that link is. But she has a PayPal account. Thank you for asking. She does a great job. Catherine, if you don't know, she's a frequent member here in the chat room, and she'll put together a parts list customized to your needs and expectations and budget. She does it for free, for fun. Several people that have built from her parts list have contacted me asking how they can they give me money to pass on to her. I prefer you didn't. Give it to her directly. Well, how do I do that? Well, at some point you must have been talking to her in order to get the parts list. But if either way, you can find her here in the chat room most days when I'm live, and you can find her on Facebook by simply typing her name as it's spelled here in the chat room. People have been spelling it just like you'd want somebody to spell your name correctly. If you spell her name correctly, you will easily find her on Facebook, where you can send her a message and reach out to her. Keith says, Carey, is everyone a moderator? I hope so, Keith. I hope so. Yeah, Catherine is in the chat today. There she is. Maybe Catherine can put a link to her PayPal account tip jar right here in the chat. Looks like there's a few people that are looking for you, Catherine. Okay, so Ryzen or Intel, Ryzen or Intel, I don't know, man. I kind of feel like I do a lot of Intel stuff here. And I do have that Ryzen. Let me step back here and see what I've got for a motherboard. Let's see, Ryzen. So there's the Ryzen 3600. And let's see, I've got a B450M from Asus and a B450M from Gigabyte. Or I have a Z390M. These are all microatx motherboards with Core i7-9700K. I also have a 9700F. You know, I think I'm going to go Ryzen, guys. I'm so accused of being an Intel shill. I can't think of any better way to give those people a middle finger than by building a Ryzen. It's funny, though, the people who call me an Intel shill never give me a penny. They never pay anything for these videos. They just take and complain. Take, complain. So I don't know why I should try to humor them. However, I do have the parts. They have to be built at some point anyway. So, why not build it today? Varney says, Carey, you look very tired. That's all right. Nothing wrong with looking tired. It's what happens when you work for a living. What about computer clubs? Are they canceled now? Here in Arizona, the computer clubs generally only meet in the wintertime. That's when all the people from out of state come to get away from, they come to Arizona to get away from the cold weather. And then they all go back home in the summertime, which doesn't leave enough people to justify a computer club meeting. So as far as I know, they may have canceled it. Like the last computer club meeting is typically in March. So they probably canceled the one in March. And I'm sure they'll resume in the fall as normal. Destry says, I'm an Intel guy, but I like that you're doing a Ryzen. Right on. Brett says, they're just trolls, Carey. Look, computers are computers. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's Intel or it's AMD. If I sat you down in front of a machine and told you to tell me if you're on an Intel or an AMD without looking at any of the specs, no benchmarking software, I just want you to bring up your applications as you normally would and use them, and then tell me which is which. You know damn well as I do, that's an impossible thing for you to know. So this passion that people have for one or the other is a little silly. You might like Ford automobiles, and I might like Chevy. Who cares? Who cares? I'll tell you what, let's make a deal. You buy the one you like, don't worry about what anybody else buys. And then everybody else, you guys do the same. But you have to like what I like. That's how it validates me. How about you have enough self-confidence that you don't need outside validation from strangers on the internet? That's some personal growth advice for you. All right, free from your Uncle Carey. Simple Text contributed $3.55. He says, thank you. I appreciate you and this community a ton. Right on, Simple Tech. Thank you. And thank you for being a part of this community. It's having amazing people like you in this community that makes it so special. Simple Tech ought to be a moderator in here, because you were exactly what I'm looking for in my blue, what do we call them? My blue wrenches. Dennis says, that case looks like it needs a Ryzen. Fair enough. Mark Stevens says, thank you for all your help. The money I've saved over the years are great. Well, thank you, Mark. Let's make sure Mark's the moderator in here. Yuri says, I'm on furlough until the 31st of October. Holy smokes. Would love to give you a hand just to learn. No pay needed. I live in Chandler. Well, unfortunately, that's just not possible. I've had a number of people reach out with the similar requests. And right now, maybe when I get a studio, but right now there's other things happening in this home where I live, where I can't just bring strangers on from the internet. And furthermore, I can't broadcast like I used to because of the telecommuting being done. So because of that, my schedule's been significantly reduced, and I'm trying to get the other location up and running so I can go back not only to my regular schedule, but even better, to do even more, to be on more often, because there'll be nobody in that entire house but me, and I will have the freedom to go on anytime, as often and for as long as I want, day after day after day. But the studio has to get ready first, and that's a bunch of work, and I can't do that work and this work at the same time. So I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to need a couple of months until the other studio gets set up. And I know Mitch, who hasn't joined me in a while, is really excited about the new location because it's much closer to where he lives. Mitch is out in Scottsdale. So for those of you who don't know Arizona, if you imagine the Phoenix metropolitan area as a big circle, it's not, but just imagine it is. Phoenix being in the middle, let's say. You've got the east side of Phoenix, then you've got the west side of Phoenix. So I'm sort of west and down a little bit. And there's, in the circle, as far as west goes, I'm not that far west. Like there's towns like Surprise and Buckeye and Goodyear, much, much further west. And then on equally, if you were to fold that circle in half and you flipped over to the other side, you would have Scottsdale. And if you went up towards the top of the circle, continued towards the edges, you'd have Chandler and Mesa, Tempe, and then Scottsdale's down below that. So basically, Mitch is on one side of the circle. I'm not quite at the edge, nowhere near the edge actually, but nowhere near the middle. And I'm equally the opposite of him, but at least when it comes to north and south, we're sort of level. It's a long drive. That's what I'm trying to tell you. So Mitch is excited at the potential of have a shorter drive to come join me. So, yeah. And there's, speak of the devil, Mitch Morrison. You know, I said this before and I'll say it again. It occurred to me after I got off the phone a couple days ago with Mitch. He says, as your producer, I need to tell you, you need to get a haircut. You guys have seen Mitch and his hair, right? It's like, was down to here. When Mitch Morrison tells you you need a haircut, it must be bad. All right. Here's what I think I'm going to do. So I just got this board in the mail. It was on sale. It was on sale. I sign up for the deals at slickdeals.com. They email you deals every day. You never know what's going to happen. So I thought, I got a couple of Ryzens. I needed motherboards. It was on sale. I don't even know what this board has on it. I just saw the price. I saw it was B450. I saw it was microatx. And I knew I had this extra Ryzen 5. Problem solved. When I saw this was a microatx case, I was like, ooh, the system's coming together. So my friend Ron's system, for those of you that were following along with this mini ITX build, I put the two Noctua fans in here. It's dead quiet. I'm going to have to do just a very minor cable management on this, but it's running everything perfectly. Windows is activated. Everything's super happy. I'll grab a couple of nylon zip ties and tie that up. The panels just snap back on. There's no screws. And it'll be ready to go out into the mail to Ron here probably by the end of next week. I hope, maybe even sooner than that, depending on how things progress with the other builds, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, that I've got to get out. So I'm going to move this aside for right now. I just wanted it up here for size comparison and to tease Ron a little bit so he could stare at it and say, oh, it's so close yet so far away. We'll just set it here for now. Let's take a look at the board. Let's see what we got. Prime B450MA Aura Sync. Ooh, Aura Sync. Well, that's the selling point right there. This opens. SATA cables. Good. Check. Got it. Motherboard. Cardboard. Manual. I/O shield. M.2 screw. ASUS Control Center Express. Please enjoy your license key during the deployment of ACC Express. I guess I'm not supposed to show you my license key for something I'm never going to install. There's drivers for a drive we don't have. No place to put a drive on here. I suppose we could plug one in externally via USB, but we are not going to use that. Owner's manual. And the last thing in this box, there's a couple of pieces of paper in here that supplement of updates to the ASUS warranty, B450 series specification updates, blah, blah, blah. Okay. We're not going to use SATA cables. We're not going to use the instructions. We're not going to use this card. Hey, look, ASUS doesn't tape the anti-static back closed. They're not worried about the motherboard escaping. Good for ASUS. Here's the board. Let's see what kind of video outs and stuff. Let's see what kind of stuff this board has. Oh, it's got a little everything there. We got separate PS2 ports for keyboard and mouse, just like the 90s. VGA and DVI and HDMI out, which is super cool. If you've got a CPU that has built-in graphics, otherwise those are just there for looks. We've got 6 USB ports there with a built-in Ethernet and regular audio. And then as far as any upgradability goes, we've got 4 full memory sockets, which is wonderful, and 1 M.2 socket. And that's all there is. So that'll work. That's exactly what we need for this build. Just set that down. And somehow this all comes apart. I guess I'll just start taking off pieces. And hopefully it'll all start to make sense. Oh, it's got a little metal frame on the edges. And then the screws, so that way they're not drilling through the glass. I don't know why that's a big deal. They're like, you know, look, I grew up in the 70s. And every car had a window frame around the windows. So when I see a hole drilled through glass, that looks modern to me. When we go back to putting frames on windows, it looks old-fashioned. However, because the edges of the glass are black and the frames are black, unlike in the Silverstone where they put chrome and they really highlighted those frames, it actually looks pretty good. I'm okay with it. Thank you for asking. Nobody asked. Now here's an interesting thing. These don't seem to have any. Can I unscrew them? I don't see any screw tip here. I don't think they come out like that. I think if it's just in super tight like that, you just have to tear your fingers off. Let me look inside of there. Why would they do that? Oh no, there's a Phillips head in there. Thank goodness. It's kind of deep in there. I need to find, I don't know, the JIS driver ought to get in there. There we go. Okay, good. Thank goodness. Not sure why they recessed them. Apparently, again, it's just aesthetics. People will be like, oh, that's such a pretty case. It's too bad you could see the little crosses on the end of the screws. If only they would have done something about that. So here's our top portion. Just put that over there. And then finally, take this side off. Wow, do you hear that thing crack open? That was on there tight. There was no way anybody was going to get that off with their fingers. And I guess it doesn't matter which side panel goes on which side. Like I said, it's all fully modular. And we've got some nylon zip ties in here. We've got our wire tie holding on our front port umbilicals, which we will just set aside for right now. Come on. Okay. We can go ahead and put the I/O shield in since that's super easy. We can get it out of the way. Some of you may have noticed I took the little magnet off of here. It was like drawing it. Everything was like being pulled into it, like it had its own orbit. So I will add it from time to time, and I'll take it off from time to time depending on what I'm doing. I do like having it, and on other occasions I like not having it. So if you're paying close enough attention, something for you to watch for in the future. Now it appears that the standoffs are all in a fixed position. There's nothing to install or remove. There's no options here with the standoffs. And we can do something I've never done before. I don't think I've done it, at least not on video. And that is just install the motherboard bare right into the case, because it looks like I'm going to have full access to it. And you guys can fully see the way the board installs. I mean, that's super easy. You can see we've got spaces here for solid state or 2.5-inch hard drives, which I would assume you're going to install solid state drives. And there's a little screw on top here, so if you don't want these, if you don't like the way they look, you can just take them out and keep it looking a little more plain. But good luck putting away the screws and the little drive sleds, or whatever they want to call them, for when you try looking for them in the future, because you'll probably misplace them. So for that reason, also because I don't plan on keeping this, I plan on selling this to somebody, I'll just leave them in there for now. So yeah, I can just put the board in right now. Just line up the board with the I/O shield. Make sure that the... Did I put the I/O shield in backwards? I sure did. I sure did do that. I'm a giddy goose. We'll just correct that little mistake. That didn't happen. You didn't see it. Never happened. Nothing to see here, citizen. Go about your regular business. Move along. Look, he made a mistake. Let's make fun of him. Okay. Wow, there's a lot of little grounding straps on this I/O shield to get trapped potentially over these ports. So I'm going to just line that up and make sure that it looks good. And in this one of these bags, let me get rid of this. In this bag right here, we should have the screws needed to mount the board. How many do we need? 1, 2, 3. I'm counting the holes in the board. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Wait a minute. Yeah, I guess that's right. I was expecting there to be a mounting hole down in this corner, and there isn't. So then my next thought was, well, is there a standoff under there that I got to be worried about grounding out? But no, it's conforming to the microatx standard, a standard for which I am not that familiar because I don't build very many microatxs. I build more microatxs than many ITXs, but most of my builds are standard ATX builds. And those of you who have no idea what language I'm speaking, that's English, and it's referring to the size of the motherboard. No reason to be intimidated by technical jargon. I've got a bracket here that does something. Another bracket that does something else. I don't think I need those. documentation. Oh, it's not even a Ziploc. I got to cut this bag open too. All right, we'll just put all that there. A couple of contributions came in while I've been talking to myself. So let me give those folks a shout out. Justin Havett with a $2 contribution and said the upside down IO shield never happened. All hail Hypnotoad. Chris Mahoney's contributed $10. Hey, Chris, thank you so much. Make sure Chris is a moderator in here. I appreciate that. Raymond Brasias has contributed $20. Hey, Raymond, thank you so much. He says, keep up the good work. I sent you a couple of donations via PayPal also. Right on, Raymond. I appreciate that. Thank you. Mats Carlson with a 50 Norwegian krona contribution. Thank you, Mats. Appreciate that. Did I get everyone? I think I got everyone. Wait a minute. Where is it? There it is. Okay. Rudiger Luthi contributed $5. He said that's for the Intel. Yeah. Well, we got the Intels coming up. JC's contributed $25. He says, thanks for everything, Carey. And no, this isn't because of the birthday message. I've been teaching myself Windows since 1998, and the information you supply is invaluable. No donation could be enough. Take care. Well, very nice, JC. Thank you. Make sure JC's a moderator in here as well. Mark Stevens with a $10 contribution. I'm not sure if I caught that earlier. David Anderson with $4.99 says, you had me cracking up when you said I was happy with my computer until I benchmarked it. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Again, Justin's contributed $10 from Justin Havu. He says, new build that he did is working fabulously. He used a Gigabyte B365 HD3 with a Core i5 9600K, 16 gigs of RAM with a 660p Intel M.2 1 terabyte NVMe drive, using a Sapphire RX 570 graphics card in a Corsair 200R and an EVGA 750 watt power supply. Very nice. I think if you guys want to share your build configurations with everybody else using PC Part Picker, you can put a link in the comments below the video, not during the live chat, but after the video airs, so that others, you know, put how much money it costs you and put approximately what month and year, because it's going to stay there forever, right? People are going to look at that not only tomorrow, but a year, 5 years from now. Somebody in 2026 might be looking at your list going, I can't believe you paid that much. But, you know, just to keep it relevant, I've posted a couple of old videos, for example, and there's been a couple of commenters saying, wow, wherever you filmed that, it's terrible. It's like, that video's 10 years old. It was a standard definition camera. It's the same kitchen, and I'm 10 years younger. You didn't put that together? You thought it was new content? So this is the internet. Just saying. You really have to be very clear and specific. Faris Al-Manai has contributed $3. Thank you so much for that. Faris or Faris? Faris? Sanjay says the new Zen 2 based Ryzen 3 3300X and 3100 both run fine on existing motherboards, so you won't have to wait for a motherboard, as you mentioned earlier. Yeah, thank you for that. Actually, the concern was that the new motherboards that are designed for these new Zen 2 based chips are not backwards compatible. That was the point I was trying to make, and I'm not going to put this new chip in an old motherboard, because to me that's just stupid. I just can't see the logic in doing it. My intent on the 3900X that's running the streaming computer was to put an X570 board in there. And I ended up using the X470 board that I already had, though it wasn't my intent. And I did it because I just had so much work to do and so much money to spend. And I thought, well, if it's going to work, then I'm just going to do it. But I guess what I'm saying is sometimes I change my mind when circumstances require it. But my intent is to always pair a new chip with a new board. Otherwise, I don't see the benefit of getting a new board with an old chip or a new chip with an old board. There are obviously going to be some features you're going to sacrifice. And in the case of the Zen 2, the PCI Express 4.0, namely, is a benefit you will lose, which may not be important. On the scale of things, it may not be important. But if you're making YouTube videos where you're being criticized by every wannabe on the planet, there gets to be a point, because these people think they're being original when they're like, oh, you paired this new chip with this old board, and they don't think like 1,000 people before them haven't already said that. They think that's an original. Anyway, it starts getting old, and then you're like, all right, okay, I get the new board and the new chip, and then all those little nitpickers could find something else to pick nits with. It really gets old. It's funny to me. I've had a video up for 7 years, and in that 7 years, it's been viewed over 1 million times. And people leave a comment like they're the first one to watch it, and they're the first one to have this idea. And I'm like, okay, Carey. I think they make some medication for this. I wonder why he looks tired. Come on, let's all say the same thing to him over 7 years. As though he's never heard it before. Because we're that smart. We came up with it before anybody else. I've allowed myself to be distracted. See, Mitch, see what happens when you're not here? What was I doing? I don't even remember. I was putting screws into this thing, right? I was going to secure the board. I need Mitch here to kind of get me back on track when I do that. Got to grab some glasses so I can see these screws. We've got a bunch of different screws here. Lots of case fan screws. Why do they give me so many case fan screws? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 case fan screws. All right, these look like little SSD screws. These look like some kind of self-tapping screw. What's that for? Ah, here's a little round-headed motherboard looking. Yep, got a runner. That looks like one of those that would go to the board. That looks like SSD. That looks like motherboard. How many did I say I needed on the board? 8? For such a tiny little board? Where's Ron? Come here, Ron. I need you to separate these screws for me. Ron could tell you a story just about that. There's 7, 8, 9, 10. Why is there 10? Unless that's another 11. Maybe those aren't for the motherboard. What did that meeting sound like when they were deciding how many screws to include with the case? Should we give them 10 or 12? 10. No, 12. No, 10. No, 12. This settles it. We're giving them 11. Let's go to manufacturing. Sign off. There are a couple of standoffs, I guess, for some boards that don't conform to the microatx. Or there's a version of microatx that requires that. Yeah, 11. What a weird number. And 4 pointy ones, 4 self-tapping. And 4 standard. Oh, that's got to be for the power supply. So those got to go to the power supply. Though typically a power supply includes the screws. And these are all fans. SSD, fan. fan, SSD, 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 fan, 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 SSD. Okay. Did you get all that? Don't make me repeat it. Sharon Idles contributed £2. She says, here's some dosh towards your forthcoming haircut. Maybe I'm not going to get it cut. Maybe I'm just going to let it grow. Maybe this is my new thing now. Or maybe I won't shave either. Oh, they're reminding me there's 1,000 people watching. Hold on, I got to suck my gut in. Hold, stand up. Stand up. Hey, everybody, welcome into the show. Sorry, were you here earlier? Did you see all that? Different guy, wasn't me. We're getting ready to install the motherboard, and just was separating out the screws in a very logical and professional manner. And I'm going to see if I got the right screw. I don't know. I'm guessing that these little short, yeah, that's two of the same thing. Coarse threaded screws are typically what's used on installing the board, but each case manufacturer likes to make up their own rules a lot of times. So I'm going to go with what is typical, or what I expect, and we'll see if I'm wrong, by just finding one of these mounting holes, making sure things are lined up, and sometimes I like to break out the power tools. I don't recommend, if you're a novice or first-time builder, you should not be tightening any screws with an electric driver. But if you're a seasoned professional, then do whatever you want. So I'm having, so one of two things is happening here. Either these motherboard mounting holes are not lining up correctly, or I've got the wrong screw. So in order to do this, I have to wear some magnification glasses and add some light so I can verify that the mounting hole on the board is lining up properly, and it isn't. I can already see it's not. So right about there, if I hold it with one hand and drive it in with the other, maybe that'll get her done. Yeah, that does appear to be the correct screw. And with one screw in, it should automatically line up the remaining mounting holes and mounting points. I would say standoffs, but in this computer case, they're just built into the motherboard tray, so they're not really standoffs in a traditional sense. And ordinarily, I would not tighten these screws all the way down. I would get all of the screws started first, so that way you can shift the motherboard around, up and down, left and right, to get all the other holes mounted, not mounted, but aligned properly with the base underneath. But this just really looks, once I put that first screw in, it looks so straight. I was like, yeah, I think I'll be all right. And if I'm wrong, it's really just more work for the electric driver. It's not more work for me. Why is that one not tightening? Oh, that's one of those pointy ones. I don't want the pointy one. That's a pointy one too. Oh, well, that changes things. Well, you really need some sharp eyes to notice that difference. Those are very similar. But if you're tightening your motherboard down and the screw just spins without locking, that's because you got the wrong screw. That's a little tip from your Uncle Carey. So you can see the little point where the screw goes, right? Let's see if I can put this down and I'll show you. I'll show you. We go right about there, I think. And you can see that point right there lines up with the hole just above it. Similarly, that one there and that one there. Those are the three remaining. Is this not focusing properly? What's going on? does seem to have a focus issue. Let me see if I can adjust it. Put it on manual. That looks pretty good. Oh, it keeps going in and out of. Come on. Yeah, it's just going to fight with me. All right, never mind. Let me just put these in real quick and we'll put the camera back. Maybe if I just back it off just a little bit, it'll cooperate a little more. So just 3 screws left. And they gave us 1 extra, which I don't know why. So if you're building along with this case and you're not sure which screws I used on the motherboard, a little tip will be just count out the screws. These screws, there were a total of 9. I initially said 11, but I had miscounted these pointy ones where I said there were 4. On those pointy ones, there's 6. So if pointy screws is too technical for you, I will try to dumb this down a little bit more. But that's all there is to putting the motherboard in. And you can see, as far as putting the power supply in, it doesn't in any way, shape, or form impact our ability to put that power supply in any easier or any more difficult. It's pretty much the same. You've got a hard drive cage right here for 3.5-inch drives. I failed to mention this earlier because I only just now saw it. So you've got the little drive caddies or sleds. There's 3 of them. So if you wanted to put some traditional 3.5-inch mechanical drives in here, you certainly can have up to 3. And of course, as I mentioned, up to 3 2.5-inch drives here along the sides. Then, of course, combined with the M.2, you've got a whole bunch of storage options on the case, which is a nice touch. I also like that the top of the case has both USB 3 and USB 2. Not 1 of each, but 2 of each, because the connector gives you 2. So if you're only utilizing, like if you buy a cheap case, like a very inexpensive case, you may find it has 1 USB 2 port and 1 USB 3 port. And what you need to know about that is it's going to plug into with the same plugs that give you 4 ports, but it's not going to give you 4 ports. It's only going to give you 2. You're supposed to have 2 USB 2s and 2 USB 3s for each port. So if the cable you're plugging into it only connects to 1, you've lost the other one by design. So great saving that money. Processor I've got today is a Ryzen 3600, 6-core, 12 threads, 4.2 gig is the max boost. Normally runs at 3.6. I can go over there. Do I need graphics? Oh yeah, I guess I need graphics for this, don't I? If it doesn't have a G after it on the AMD line, on the Ryzen series, you got to have that letter G after it if you want built-in graphics, which is fine for office work and maybe some very light gaming. There's our chip, our instructions, and our sticker. Sticker is very important because that's what makes it go fast. That right there. If I stuck this on my camera, this video would happen so much faster. And notice that the way I'm holding the parts, always hold the parts by the edges. You don't have to worry about any electrostatic discharge. There's nowhere for this static to go. And listen, there's a lot of people on the internet who know a lot more than I do who don't have their own business for 30 years, who've never really built more than their own computer, if even that, who will tell you I'm wrong. So obviously you need to listen to the person you think might, I don't know, have more basis for their explanation. But it's not a contest, it's not a game, and I don't win anything based on who you choose to believe. So just saying, don't let that stop you. All right, now this chip is only going to go in one direction. There's typically a little indicator of a little dot or a golden triangle like this on the bottom of the chip. Why AMD puts this little golden triangle on the underside, I can't see the underside when I'm installing it. Might need to write to Sue Lin or whatever her name is and let her know. Just so you know, I don't install the chip this way. I don't know how you guys do it, but I install it this way and put that little gold triangle on the bottom. Not real useful to me, man. But hey, I don't want to be an Intel shill or anything. God forbid I say anything critical about AMD, because they're allowed to get away with stuff. All right, that just sits straight down. I'm going to lower that down, and that locks it into position. We've got our heatsink and fan that's included, and it's already got thermal compound applied, so you don't have to worry about the proper way to do it, and air bubbles, and I don't know, whatever other thing your imagination can possibly come up with. See that? It's already on there. Looks like it's got something on it. Well, don't touch it. Leave it alone. It was put on there's a little piece of plastic that keeps it clean. And then we have to decide which way this is going to go on. You'll see that this has screws. It's going to secure down with these screws. And we can't do that with these brackets in place, because those brackets from the motherboard manufacturer are designed for a different kind of a cooler that would clip on, that AMD also offers with some of their other chips. So we're just going to take these brackets off, but we're going to leave the plate that they're screwed into back under the board. We still need the back plate. There's one. You know what? My torque setting, well, you heard that grinding sound was the clutch. So we'll just crank that up to a bit more torque. And take that one out. And then we'll take this one out. And that was the back plate falling through the I thought that underneath the board it was solid. I didn't notice there's a big hole under there. So the back plate just came crashing down, and it's laying on there, right down there. But it's not a big deal. It just kind of surprised me. It's a little surprise. So what we're going to do is now we have to decide which way we want to put the fan on. We can put it on this way with the cord going towards the RAM, which doesn't seem ideal. The other problem putting it on this direction, you see the way the top of the AMD cooler bulges out like this? If you put this towards your RAM, it sort of makes the first RAM module very difficult to get in and out of with many motherboard designs. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'm going to rotate this. It can only go on either this way or 180 degrees, because it's not perfectly square like an Intel cooler. It's rectangular, so it can only go on one of two possible ways. An Intel cooler can go on every 90 degrees. This one's got to be 180 degrees. It's got to be spun halfway around. So we only have two choices, which means it can go on this way. And this makes more sense to me with regards to keeping RAM clearance here, because this does just stick out a little bit. I don't know how well you can pick that up, but that little bit can make a difference. Ideally, AMD would have rotated this to the top, knowing that most cases, the vast majority, would benefit from this being rotated. I'm not sure why AMD does that. Intel does the same thing, but at least with Intel, it's a sticker. This actually requires you dismantling it to correct it. It's very easy to damage it in the process. It's not worth it. Not in my opinion. So now what I can do, since I've got that just resting on there, I'm going to reach down in here, find that back plate, and I'll just hold it in position. I probably need a screwdriver. Well, I'm better do that. I'll grab my regular old yellow handle screwdriver we haven't seen in some time, bring it out of retirement. Joseph Hawkins contributed 9 New Zealand dollars. Thank you, Joseph. He says, Carey, I would have said this earlier. I just got a tooth out. Plus, I have to go again. Yikes. Well, that tooth will never bother you again. Sounds like. Thank you, Joseph. Now, if I want some more room to work in here, right, so I can get my hand in here pretty easy to hold that back plate, but this whole hard drive tray, remember I said this is modular, this whole case. That means every part of the case comes off, including these rails up here on the top. These come off, and you can adjust them for different radiators and such. They slide around and they come off. I'm probably not using enough force to do it. I think you pull back on them or something. Anyway, I'm going to leave them up there because I'm not using them, and they're not really in my way. I was just going to show you, but Gamers Nexus pulls these things off and moves them around, and I'm sure there's some little release or something I'm not hitting, and I honestly don't care. So, yeah, let me go back to what I was doing, which is I'm going to put this back plate back on, and the back plate, this is what it looks like. This is stock. It doesn't have to go on any particular, whatever ways. I'm going to line up one of those two directions. And I can even, if I want to, I can come in, since I don't have a power supply, might be a little easier for me to just bring it in right through here and then hold it. Kind of feels like it's not lining up right. Bear with me for a second here. Anything that's in my way, I can just easily remove. What is it jammed up against? Oh, I see what I did. So the motherboard tray, I've kind of placed it right up against the inside of the motherboard tray. So I went from a circumstance where it wasn't staying in, and now I was having a hard time getting it back out. So you can see I've got real easy access to this. Even this one, I can get this one out of the way. And I have full access now from both sides, so I don't have to take the board back out. And I can just line it back up. I can just line that back up, I said. Here's my flashlight. So lighting, on the other hand, is a different problem. Just use my third arm. Wow, that's pretty interesting. The way that this back plate goes in puts it right up against the hard drive cage. So I'm surprised it fell out, because it seems like when it's in properly, this one side is sort of wedged in between the bottom of the motherboard and the top of the motherboard tray where the hard drive cage aligns. That's interesting. I mean, it's very tight, so I don't know why it fell out. But it's in there now. And I can grab my yellow-handled screwdriver here. And I know you're not going to get much of a view for a moment, but I need to start this while I can hold everything in the proper location. And this is where I've got to align the top of the heatsink with the mounting holes. And we're just going to give opposite corners a couple of spins just to get it started. Then I can spin it around and show you because it'll all be lined up and the plate won't fall out anymore. So that's what we're looking at right there. And then this power cable needs to come across this way. So with that, I gave that one a couple turns. We'll give this one a couple turns. You can see that back plate's still pretty loose. I can't tell if I'm biting into it or not. So I'm going to have to just kind of hold it just to make sure. I think that's going in. And then we can come around and again do the opposite side. You can see because I've tightened it so much, it looks like I didn't tighten this side at all. The cooler is completely tilted. I'm not sure how well you can see that. So I need to loosen these up. I've tightened them too much by incorrectly assuming I had started one screw on this side, which apparently did not start the way I had thought it did. And the screws are under springs. And what happens if you tighten one side too much is you'll end up with a cooler that's not sitting completely flat against the top of your CPU and it won't cool properly. So I need to just tighten one of these down. And as I press it down, I can see the back plates also going down. And that's probably why I didn't secure. So I'm going to have to hold the back plate up. Yeah, it's just not wanting to start. There it goes. Okay, and I've tightened that down quite a bit just to try to make up for the other side. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I want to make sure these all get properly started. Feels like it's just not grabbing on this one. May not be lined up properly. Yeah, looks like it's just a little, the screw's got to go a little bit on an angle here. The screw on the heatsink, it kind of moves around like this. And if you don't have it perfectly straight up and down, it's not going to align properly with where it screws into the back plate, and you'll just sit there spinning it. So that's why you've got to kind of put the screwdriver in different angles until you can feel that screw bite down into the threads. Yeah, there we go, I think. So that's all the way tightened. Now I'm going to come around to this side, and I'm going to tighten down the opposite screw. And these screws do come to a dead stop. And if the motherboard wasn't mounted into the case, this would have gone a lot quicker. But for me, I'm pretty desperate to do something different, even if it may be a little bit more difficult. Just the fact that you can do it, that's doable, I think is interesting. It's different. And then for a motherboard, for a CPU fan header, we plug onto the motherboard CPU fan header, which is, there's two. One right above the other. One says CHA fan 2, that would be chassis fan 2. And the one below says CPU fan, so clearly the CPU fan goes right there. That light might be a little too bright for you guys. See if I can zoom in on that and show you what has he done. So you'll see there's two fan headers, one in front of the other, and the CPU fan is labeled as such, and it's the one closest to the CPU. And we can put a case fan here on this header if we want to. Here we've got all of our frontboard umbilicals, which we can easily get out of the way if we want to right now. This is super easy to wire this stuff up, because this is our front USB 3, front USB 2, front audio ports, and then our power switch, reset switch, power LED, and hard drive LED. That's all super easy to get at with this wide open case like that. Digger has contributed $10. Thank you to Digger. And Joe Dunderdale's contributed $2 Canadian. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sponsoring my channel. I appreciate that very much. And Rick Lakes contributed $2. Thank you, Rick. Yes, if you are enjoying the content, there's a little thumb that you can click. And if you click on that, that tells me you're enjoying the content. If you don't click on it, I guess you're not liking it. I mean, it's not literally that thumb, but it's right underneath the video you're watching. Also, you can always click the subscribe button if you want to make yourself aware, want to be notified when new content is posted or when I go live. And it's kind of a two-step process. The first thing you do, besides hitting like, you don't have to hit like. The first thing you got to do is hit the red subscribe button, and then the little bell icon highlights, and you turn on notifications by ringing the bell. That's how that works. Okay. I need to put some RAM in here. Only one side of this opens. What sort of RAM should I put in there? Let me see what I've got. It's going to be 32 gig of something. That's all I know. That's all I have. Everything's 32 gigs around here. Team Vulcan T-Force. Yeah, we could do that. Sure. Let's try it. No, you know what? Let's not. Let's use the other Evo Spear memory I've got. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just making it up as I go. Dale Maluk has contributed $5. He says, have some cola on me. Thank you, Dale. Here's the RAM I'm going to use. This is the Guile Spear, and all of its specifications are listed right there. There's 16 gigs each. There's two of them, a total of 32 gigs. This worked really well in the other system I've got back here that I'm building for my friend Ron, so we'll just use the other setup. The reason I don't want to use the other the Team T-Force RAM is I might want it in a system that needs 4 sticks, and all 4 sticks have to be the same. And I only have 2 sticks of this. So if everything else is the same, I'll use the one I've got 2 of instead of the one I've got 4 of, and then it'll leave me 2 different sets of 2, which is probably fine since I use usually 2 in most builds, but I like the option if somebody should want 64 gigs of RAM, I could do that because you'd want it all to be the same. Now, I know with ASUS boards, they like you to use slots A2 and B2 first, which is really strange. And on this board, A2 and B2, are they the gray ones or the black ones? They're the gray ones. So we're going to use the gray slots first. Make sure the RAM is aligned properly with the track. No force should be required. It should just seat very gently into the track. And once it does, use your thumbs, push down one corner, then the other corner. And usually you hear it click. I didn't hear this side click, so I'll pop it back out. It's just not clicking. It's weird. I'm not comfortable unless I hear the click. All right, yeah. I guess that's going to do it. One last one. It's going to go into the other gray slot. Again, the RAM only goes in one direction. Don't use force. Line it up with the track. Once it's properly seated in the track, then you can forcefully push down and hear that click, or the subtle click-like sound. I got to get an M.2 drive in there. M.2, M.2. What should I use? What do I have? You know what? I've got this other gigabyte SSD, and I want to see if it behaves the same way as the other gigabyte SSD. I bought two of them at the same time, and then I can determine if it's a compatibility issue or I just got a bad unit. So if this one behaves the same way, I know it's something with perhaps firmware. Mike Dale's contributed $1 Canadian. Thank you, Mike. So this is the gigabyte SSD. This is 1 terabyte for $119.95 or something like that. And it's the cheapest 1 terabyte NVMe drive I could find currently. The Intel 660p 1 terabyte used to pick those up for under $100. Now they're like $125. So this is a little bit more, I'm sorry, it's a little, right now it's like $5 cheaper. And I think performance-wise, it's perhaps a little faster. I don't know because I've never used one before. And my attempts to use one on the previous build didn't work out so well. So being the glutton for punishment that I am, I want to try again. So this will fall out of the package if you're not careful. You'll see one side of the package is indented, and so you want to open the package with that indent facing down. If you open it the opposite way, which is what I just did, it'll just fall out, hit the floor. Typically it won't cause any harm because it's just a simple little circuit board. It's really nothing to break. It's just a good idea and a general rule done to drop stuff. So that's going to go right into the M.2 slot right there. And you'll push it in on an angle. And then that little bag, this bag has a little screw, little bag with a little screw in there. Oh, there's a little standoff in there too. Do I have to put the standoff in? Yep. So there's a little standoff and a little screw that's got to go in. And the reason you've got to put it in is there are multiple lengths available of solid state drives, although this length is the one you're going to see an abundance of. In fact, finding one of a different length is actually quite difficult, but they're out there. And so there's different positions that you put the standoff in depending on the length of the SSD. This SSD is a 2280. That means it is 22 millimeters wide and 80 millimeters long. So on the motherboard, it'll probably have one of the little holes will say perhaps 80 next to it, but regardless, it's usually the last hole. Nope, this one actually goes to 110. So they do make them a little longer. So 80 falls sort of second to last, I suppose you could say. And just tightening by hand isn't really good enough. If you got a 5 millimeter socket or a pair of needle nose pliers, a socket is ideal, much preferred. And we don't want to over tighten it, but we definitely want to make it more than just tightened by hand because it will easily unscrew. And it's also easy to strip it if you over tighten it. It'll never tighten again. So be very careful with that. And also the driver I'm going to use to put this little tiny screw in is the JIS, the Japanese, what is it, industrial standard, something like that. And well, you can use a Phillips #1. It just doesn't fit that well. And these JIS drivers are, if you're going to be doing electronics work, especially with laptops, this is the driver you want. For all the other screws, quite literally, a Phillips #2 American standard is fine. In fact, it's preferred. Once again, I'll put this M.2 drive back in the slot. And this time, when I lower it down with one hand, this screw will go right into the standoff I've put in. And don't over tighten the screw. Its sole purpose is to secure the drive from falling out. So right there, just make it snug and nothing further than snug is all that's required. Samuel Ramos has contributed $9.99. Right on, Samuel. Thank you. You can see we have full access now to all these different ports and connectors. So for example, I see a USB 3 connector right here. And if I'm not worried about my cable management right now, if I just want to get things hooked up, I can grab that USB 3 cable and just bring it right around like this and just plug it straight in. Right? And then here we've got, I don't know, I'm just going to grab something. I'll see what it is after I grab it. This is how hard it is to build a computer. Like, I literally don't care what I'm grabbing. This says it's USB 2. So we've got two USB 2 ports right next to the USB 3 port here. We can choose to go around it one way or the other. I think I want to go this way. It's got one pin that's blocked and one pin that's missing, so that way it can only go on in one direction, and it doesn't matter which one we use. So I like to keep all my cables together. I think it just looks nicer since it's going to have glass panels and someone's going to see it. Now we've hooked up USB 3 and USB 2. That's done. Somewhere around here there's another cable. That's got to be audio, right? This is HD audio, and it's going to plug in right over here where it says AAFP, which is audio, what's the other A? Front panel. And anyway, that's got a pin missing one in. So the pin missing on the USB is at the end, and the pin missing on the audio is one pin in. So that way you can only put this connector in one direction, and it won't fit on any of the other connectors at all. But you can mistakenly just put it on one row of pins if you're not careful. The worst that's going to happen is your audio is not going to work. And there's really no good cable management in here to hide these cables, because it looks like I might have to go around this main USB 3 cable in order to keep the cables from just hanging on top of the motherboard, because that looks terrible. So we'll just reroute that around here and plug it right back in. There's no clips or anything. It's held in with friction. So that's super easy. And then we've got the front panel connector, which has our power switch, reset switch, and that is located right here, this connector. So all the wiring is real close together. And this flat ribbon here on this case is the front switches and LEDs. Then that's always the same pattern on every build, on every case I've ever worked on. And that is on the top row, starting on the left side, the positive cable for the power LED goes on there, with the negative cable beside it to the right. And if I can just straighten these out, so positive and negative for the power LED are going to go on the first two pins, starting from the left side, positive going to the edge. And then the hard drive LED is going to align to those two pins right behind it. So that's taking up your first two pins on rows 1 and 2 of that connector. And then the power switch goes right next to the two pins right up against the power LED, of which we only have 2 pins left to use on that top row. And you'll notice these are all going on vertically. I'm not putting them, they're going on horizontally. I'm not putting them on vertically. The reset switch is going to go right beside the hard drive LED and right under or behind the power switch. And that's all there is. We've done all the front cable management, or cable hookup. We haven't done any cable management. We've hooked all the cables up except for power supply. Now, once I put a power supply in here, we can test fire this bad. Well, I guess I need a graphics card. All right, so we need a graphics card and a power supply, and this thing should fire up. The question is, what power supply do I want to use? Oh, here we go again. What do I have hanging around that I can use? What's open? Here's something open. I'm going to grab that. What is it? Don't know, don't care. What's the wattage? It'll be enough. How do you know if you don't look? Because it's a low power system. It's not going to use that much power. Whatever I got's more than enough. Well, you're careless. Yes, I am. Because building computers is super easy. It doesn't require, unless you're building a super high-end computer, it doesn't require that kind of attention. Building a computer is super easy. This is a 500-watt bronze EVGA power supply. It's not modular. Modular would be ideal in a glass system, but I'm not worried about it right now because it's all going to be hidden under there anyway. and I just want to make the thing boot. Now I got to figure out how I'm going to get the power supply in here, and I also see a fan cable. This is for this front fan. We can hook this front fan up right now and get it out of the way. And any of the fan headers on the motherboard will work. You don't have to use any specific one. Let's take a quick look here. We pull this up through here. Do I have any down here with the rest of the cables? Of course not. I got one here. Oh, I've got that one up by the CPU fan. We'll just use that one. That'll work. Just plug that in. Right there. So one of the things I find a bit amusing are the people online that look at all the little details of things as though they matter, and they make a big deal about it. It's slightly amusing to me because back in the day, the handling of the parts was far more critical and they were far more delicate. And today, you almost have to try hard to break a part. You almost have to intentionally try to break it. And by handling the parts the way I show you, holding it by the edges, you know, whether or not you plug a connector in the wrong place, generally doesn't hurt the board whatsoever. Depends if the connector you're plugging in is power, but otherwise, it, for the most part, doesn't hurt anything. Most things won't even plug in if it's not the right plug, and if they do plug in, I'm not aware of any way that you can cause damage to anything. It just doesn't work right until you correct it. So you can allow yourself to make mistakes, and it's ideal, I suppose, that you do it all right the first time, but I don't know many things you will do in your life that you will do right the first time. And you need to allow yourself permission to learn the way you need to learn, not the way somebody else learns. But the first key that we all need to agree on is to not be afraid of those mistakes and to not think that those mistakes are somehow embarrassing or going to cost you a lot of money. It is the cost of education, and this cost is very low when you consider what traditional school costs. And furthermore, the lessons you learn through experience will stay with you far longer than the lessons you learn from a book or in theory. So I encourage you, if there's any reason you're hesitating to build a computer, get over it and build one. It's very rewarding. That being said, I don't know how I'm going to get my power supply in here. I'm looking, it ain't going to go in this way. No, that's not happening. It ain't going in this way. No, that's not happening. It ain't going in that way. So how's it go in? Well, let's just take a quick look here. Again, I've got the owner's manual for the case. I can open it up and look at it at any time, but that's like cheating. The fun part for me is to figure it out on my own, and that's what customers pay me for anyway. When I go to a customer's location to do work on their computer, I've probably never seen their brand and make of computer ever in my life, but they expect me to know how to fix it. And that's what I intend to do in this example. It looks like this whole bottom piece comes off. I see 2 thumb screws here. Let's see what happens if we take these off. Look at that. Like magic. A lot of times, if you use logic and you have proper expectations of the way things are typically designed, manuals typically are only describing what is obvious, at least as far as cases go. Now the power supply is going to go in with the fan facing down. Whoops. I'm knocking all these screws loose. Get back up there. So we're going to have the fan facing down because it's going to draw air in. And that will align there. The power supply probably came with screws, although this is an open box that I've got laying around here. So I'll just use the screws for the power supply that came with the case. Either way is fine. They're black, so they match. Oh, I gotta turn that torque. I never turned it. Jeez, I put the motherboard in on that eye of a torque. Okay, let's see. Let's go here. That's better. Nope, it's this one. One more left. So the point I was trying to make is, even though this is going to have glass here, most of these cables are going to be stuck under here where they're not really going to be seen anyway. And this will be for a graphics card. We're going to need that one. And we need 2 for the motherboard. The big one's going to go up through here. And the little one, is that on my side? No, it's going to be on the other side. Oh, it is on my side. So that can just come right through like this. Like this. So this is an 8-pin CPU power connector. Look how easy it is to access that. This case makes it so easy. I'll give them credit. Super easy to work on. Although I'm realizing, no, that'll be all right. That'll be all right. I was going to say maybe this isn't going to go back on, but it actually has numerous places you can place it. I can't remember where it was before, but I'll put it here for now, just to put it somewhere. That helps keep the cable in one place. And then we have the third one. We can put that one back. It can go right there. Yeah, that's spaced out, right? All the thumb screws are the same, so you don't have to put them back exactly in the same holes they came out of. I'm sitting on some of the power cables right now. I'm not worried about it. This is the motherboard power connector, which is a 20-pin plus a 4-pin. The clip always goes to the outside edge on all boards, and that's going to align. Again, don't put any force until you want it to align with the plug, or the plug to align with the socket. And as it starts to seat down, then you can apply some downward pressure to make sure that that clip on the side clicks into place. Now, if you've not done this a few times, you need to be patient. And then once it aligns, it seats, and then you can push down. And then you'll hear it click and it locks in. And I'll have to do something with this cable management later. As for the rest of these cables here, we don't need them for anything else. So by flipping the case back up on its side here, I can tuck them in. This is going to be used for our graphics card, so we're going to keep that one out and available. But the rest of these can just be kept out of sight, out of mind. We'll just tuck them in right there, and we can put the back, or the bottom rather, back on. Try to remember, did it go on this way? No, it went on this way, with the handle facing the back. It's got a little track. Once you put it on about, leaving about a half an inch, well, not even a half inch, a quarter of an inch, then it slides in, and it should lock in evenly. And then there's 2 thumb screws we took out that we'll put right back. One here, and one down here. And you'll see we've got the filter on the bottom for the air intake on the power supply. Don't forget about your filters, guys. If you have filters on the bottom, out of sight, out of mind, take them off and clean them. If you're not cleaning your filters, take them off and don't put them back, because having no filter is better than having a clogged filter. Okay, all we need now is a graphics card. What am I going to do? I'm going to get a graphics card. This is not a high-end system, so I'm not going to put a high-end graphics card in there. I'm sure I've got something here I can use. Something laying around. GeForce GTX 1660 Ti. Sounds good. Or a GTX 1070 Ti. No, 1070 is too fancy. We'll do the 1660 Ti. What else do I have? I got a couple of used ones laying around. Nah, everything else is new. We'll keep everything new. It's been sitting in a box for 6 months, I think. It's a little dusty. Just a little bit, if you think I'm kidding. I've had it for a while. It's never been opened. Must have been on sale. So this has to go into this slot right here. So I'm going to have to remove a couple of these slot covers. Well, at least there's no screws required to get this thing off I was complaining about. But I would just prefer that all of the screws were internal, that nothing was external like this. This just bothers me. And I think I should have to remove the first two, but I just want to verify that. And the way I'm going to do that is by lining up this card into the slot without pressing it in, and then seeing where it aligns. So if it's going to go in right there, it aligns with the second and third one. See that? I would have taken out the once. It's going to align with this one and this one, not these first two. I thought it would have been the first two. Okay, so those two are out. We'll take the two PCI slot covers out of here. Make sure that this little clip here is in the open position back here on the, you can't see, right here, well, you still can't see. At the end of the slot that you're going to plug your graphics card into, there's a clip that moves back and forth. Make sure it's in the open position, away from the connector. And then what's going to happen is when the graphics card slides into that slot, it's going to go underneath that hook right there. It's going to lock your card in. So we'll just come in here. Fans are going to face down as they are here, or towards you as you're building it with this orientation. Again, you align the slot, you align the plug with the slot. Once it's aligned properly, then you can push down on it. And then that little connector should lock it in. And we can put the two screws that we had just removed right back in, which may require adjusting the card a little bit so the screws will align. Depending on the length and weight of the card and the design of the case, this sometimes takes a little bit of patience to get it aligned properly. And then that little stupid piece can go right back on. Is that what they call it in the instruction book? The little stupid piece? Once you've done installing your graphics card, put the little stupid piece back on. That's how I would have worded it. For some reason, they're not asking me to write a lot of user manuals. It should have come off a lot easier. Does this guy just complain about everything all the time? I don't know. Is that a complaint? This is the CPU, the power supply cable for the graphics card power. And again, there's kind of a cable management nightmare going on here, which I will sort through later. I just want to turn this bad boy on and see if it works. Kind of feel like I've earned that now. The clip, there's a clip on one side of this connector. It doesn't matter which of the two we use. Some graphics cards use two. They're both identical. And if your graphics card only requires one, it doesn't matter which one. Sometimes it's easier to do the end one when it comes to cable management, you can tie up the other half. It's a judgment call. Some case designs may also limit, depending on the power supply, how much play you've got with the cable, how much slack. And you could be forced to use, although I've not quite seen that in a long time, you could be forced to use the cable on the connector on the end of the cable because it's a little bit longer to reach a far distance. Now, that is some of the ugliest cabling I've seen in a long time, and I can't wait to show that off with some glass panels, but I'll figure out the cable management later. We're ready to test fire it, and I want to do that right now. I'm really anxious now because everything's hooked up, all the cabling's hooked up, everything's ready to go. So we're going to grab an HDMI cable here first and foremost. I got to find an HDMI slot back here. That's great. I got to take this back off because they have these little dust covers installed, and with the screws securing the graphics card in, they're just not straight enough. That's DisplayPort. That's HDMI right there. DisplayPort. This really needs to get pushed more this way, but that won't allow for it. Just the way they designed it, I guess. I don't know what to say. But I'm going to push it this way as I tighten the screws down to keep it from going from where it wants to go. And then we'll put this little piece back on. This piece that I like so much. I just like taking it on and putting it off. It's just what I live for. It's just such a normal thing that everybody has on their case. Totally justifiable. Industry standard plastic thingy that's going to break. To struggle with. Yeah, that's done. Okay, and now plugging in the HDMI cable. That's what I was doing, right? So we'll plug that in. Now, I don't have a monitor here, so I got to use your monitor. Okay, I'm using your monitor at home. If I plug into this graphics, I'm not going to see anything. That's the motherboard graphics, and nothing's going to happen. It's important you plug into the proper output for your video card. So I'll usually take that little plastic dust cover and I'll plug it into the board so my customer doesn't call me and say, how come I don't have any video? So we'll just plug that right there. The other half, or the other end rather, of this cable, I'm going to plug this into the back of your monitor right now. So that's going to go back here. I need a power cable and I need a keyboard and a mouse. So here is a wireless keyboard and mouse. It's got the little dongle right here. One dongle for both keyboard and mouse. Plug it into any available USB port, doesn't matter. That one looks good to me. Let me make sure they're both turned on. Let me move these screws out of the way. Power supply is in the off position on the switch, and I'm going to grab my power cable and we'll plug it in right down here into the back. Right here. Flip the switch on. You see we've got some lights on the motherboard that have come on. And if I hit the power switch, these fans should start spinning, and I'll flip the input over to your monitor. Fans are all spinning. Let's go to your monitor. The no signal is a normal sign. That's what we want to see until it initializes. Give it a moment to initialize. This could take 60 to 90 seconds, and we will hopefully get some video here in a moment. This is kind of the nail-biting part of the build where you're powered on and you're waiting for that first power on self-test, which is what it's just doing right now. Finally, it got there. And now it's not going to have anything to boot to because we have no operating system. It does detect that we've got the new CPU installed. It does recognize the CPU as a Ryzen 5 3600 6-core processor. And now I can put in a USB flash drive that has Windows 10 installation media on it. And I've got a video that shows you how you can make your own. I'm going to hit reset. Why did reset not work? Do I not have? There it goes. So I'm going to reset it. And this time when it boots, it should auto sense the flash drive and automatically boot from the flash drive, which again is the Windows 10 install media, because there's nothing else it can boot from. It doesn't have a choice. There's no optical drive. The M.2 drive has no operating system, no partition, and no format. But apparently I'm wrong, because it still wants us to go into the setup. So we'll hit F1 to run setup. And we'll see what we've got in here. There might be a BIOS update that we could address as well. I'm going to leave everything basically alone in here, and I'm just going to hit F10, which is save and exit. And ideally, when it boots now, it shouldn't give us any more problem, and it should start up right to the USB flash drive to begin the Windows 10 installation process, which will automatically partition and format the M.2 drive. There we go. So it is working as it should, and Windows 10 should install relatively quickly. And while we're doing this, I can turn on camera 1 again, and then I can put myself right over here so you can see everything is real. I'm not superimposing anything or doing any camera trickery, because, you know, guy in his kitchen with a $10,000 video editing rig is clearly a thing on YouTube. Probably is. So right here for the Windows 10 install, we'll start by hitting next and install now. And hopefully this will all happen quickly. With regards to this, let's see, the power LED is on. Hard drive LED should be blinking. Oh, I guess there isn't a light on this fan. Good. I'm happy with that. On the pictures, it shows an RGB fan, but maybe this didn't come with it or something. I'm fine with it. Down here, we'll say, I don't have a product key. And that way we can install Windows 10 Pro, which I do have a product key for. We'll install Windows 10 Pro. We'll have to agree to the end user license agreement, and then we'll do custom install. Here it sees the 1 terabyte gigabyte NVMe drive. We'll hit next, and it will make several partitions, format those partitions, and install Windows 10 right now. And while we're waiting, I'll give a couple shouts out here to some folks that have contributed during the broadcast that I've missed. Patricia Runyon contributed $2. Mike Dale, $2.40 Canadian. Said, I just found a way to clear off the prepaid card. Right on, Mike here. Got any more prepaid cards? I'm your guy. Madi Yoel contributed $20. Hey, Madi, good to see you. Thank you. Spiros Z contributed $5 Canadian and says, I've been a fan since about 8 years ago. Wow. I built 2 PCs since then, and I just wanted to say thanks. Right on. Well, thank you. Thanks to all of you. Make sure we've got some more friends in blue here. Michael Dane has contributed $5. He says, that's a great build, Carey. You're like the master of computer builds. Well, master of something. Hugh Wong contributed $2. Thank you, Hugh. Samuel Ramos and Mike Dale again. Johnny Zemer with a $5 contribution. Thomas Robinson with £5. And I think I got everybody else. Did I miss anyone? If so, you be sure and shoot me out in the chat room. I mean, just let me know. Right now we've got 1,383 people watching. Give me a shout out. Let me know, where are you in the world? Where are you watching me from? What state? What country? I'm pretty sure I know the planet. You don't have to be that specific. I'm trying to stand in the frame. John Williams says, hey, Carey, nice build. He's watching us from Madison, Wisconsin. Right on. Ken Stout says, shout out to Catherine. I'm late, but she was a great help. Folks joining us from St. Louis and Cincinnati, Australia, North Carolina, Oregon, Missouri, Australia, the UK, lots of folks joining us there from Michigan, New Mexico, Louisiana, and Thailand, Alabama, Canada, Pennsylvania, New York City, Florida, Georgia, Seattle, Iowa, Texas, okay, so now it's waiting on me here. I just realized. So I'm going to click OK for United States. You see how quick that Windows 10 installs these days. It's pretty fast on a modern system. And we're going to skip any secondary keyboard language. And I'm going to say I don't have internet. That's critical. Continue with limited setup. And the reason it's critical is because I want to create a local user account. I don't want a Microsoft account. We'll just call it user. I'll hit enter and hit enter again for the password. Then it will prompt. And with the rest of this is a choice you can make. I usually just say no, and I'll let the customer decide what they want to do, which includes declining that as well. And I turn everything off but the location service. That way the time zone can be set automatically to the customer that ends up with this system. That's pretty much it. Windows is installed. Now, as I mentioned, there is no customer for this build, and you'll also notice these fans on the graphics card are not turning. And they're not turning because the graphics card, displaying a desktop is not difficult work. When we really press the graphics card hard, when we make it work, those fans will come on when it needs additional cooling. But right now, it's not even breaking a sweat. So to keep the noise down, to keep the dust down, and to keep the energy usage down, the electricity usage, those fans are off, and that's normal. Many power supplies work the same way, and there's even many 4-pin style fans for cases and all-in-one radiators that will do the exact same thing. So don't let that concern you, unless they never come on, in which case it might be something to look into. So if anybody's interested in purchasing the system and you want to make some changes to it, something you want to add or remove or change, certainly open to that. You'll have to reach out to me through my email address, which you can reach out to me if you go to the Tech-Vets website, www.tech, or the minus, vets, V-E-T-S, like veterans, tech-vets.com. On the right side, you'll see a button that says to contact CareyHolzman. You click on it, and that's how you can reach out to me. And at this point, we're looking at just doing some Windows updates and installing some drivers, and it's pretty much good to go. As you can see, the time and the BIOS, the date and the time are set for the country it was made in, which is several hours ahead of the US, which is why it says it's Friday. Or is it? No, is it Thursday? No, it's Friday. It says it's Friday the 8th, which it is not yet. And then it also says it's 10 a.m. So there's like a 13 or 14 hour difference from the factory time where this board was made, and that's normal. That's how they come out of the box. And when I connect this to the internet, which I've not done yet, it will automatically synchronize the date and time, since I've allowed location services based on my IP address. Or I can set it by hand. But either way, I don't have to go into the BIOS. I do that right in there to Windows, and then the BIOS will change accordingly. $5 just came in from Elliot Fleming. Thank you, Elliot. I appreciate that. And Rusty Nail contributed $5. Said, here's hello from God's waiting room. Clearly that's Florida. Richard Sobolesk, hold on a minute. Richard Sobolewski has contributed $5. He says, keep it up, my man. I'm from Kissimmee, Florida. Right on. Thank you, Richard. And Rusty Nail. and Elliot. And another 10 bucks from Madi OL. He says he loves that case. I really like the design of it, but the cable management is really, I don't know. I just don't know. And we can see the hard drive LED is blinking off and on. It's red. I like that that's red. You can see the CPU fan is spinning. Overall, super easy build. I mean, as far as building in this case, it's a builder's dream because there's just not a lot to get in your way. With regards to making it look pretty after the fact, different story, but I'll figure that out. In the meantime, I think that's going to wrap it up for me tonight. I'm not going to run any tests on this tonight because I'm already, what am I, 3 hours into this 2-hour broadcast? No, I'm only 2 hours and 16. So I'm only 16 minutes beyond my intent. That's actually better than I thought, but still 16 minutes past where I should have been. So I want to thank everybody for joining me. We'll follow up on the build and how it performs with regards to heat. I probably won't have time to do anything with it anyway. But if I do, I want to figure out something with those cables. That really bothers me. The side panels can easily go back on at this point if I want to just ignore it. Like if I go full screen here, only because I got to do something with these panels or they're going to get, because they're glass, I don't want to scratch them. I can go ahead and put them right back on just to keep them clear and out of the way. And then you guys won't feel like you're missing anything when I do the testing. How does that go on? Doesn't really seem like it's doing much. It's just got a little lip on this side. Nothing else seems to hold it. That's it. That's all there is? Wow, that's kind of scary. So really got to make sure you put your thumb screws back, because that's required, or that's just going to fall right out of there. And of course the top piece right here. And that's going to go on with a little handle going towards the back of the case. Once again, it's got a little lip here that's hooking underneath the front, or it's supposed to. Why is it not? Is there a cable in the way? No. Everything looks happy. I guess that's as far as it goes. Seems like one side's going on better than the other. That's a little cheesy. Why is it doing that? Oh, went right on. I guess I just didn't have it aligned right. Huh. Well, it is only a $99 case. I mean, for 99 bucks, that's fair. It's definitely not perfect. And the build quality could certainly be a little better, but it's not half bad. And in my book, that means it's half good. And a case like this wouldn't be uncommon to be around twice the price. So it's about half the price, and it's about half as good. You are getting what you pay for. Actually, I think you're getting pretty good value here. Considering some of the other cases I've seen available at different price points, this feels like a pretty good deal. I'm running into a cable length issue, so I can't turn this for you to see it. I'm just going to put that final panel on. Come on. Okay, now there's another thumb screw somewhere. The other side doesn't feel like it's on right. I guess you just have to tighten the thumb screws down until it aligns flush here. There it is. And I was doing that the whole time while it's running. You can see if I flip back over to camera 2, which is your monitor, we're still in Windows. And we can, let's see, right click, go to device management. No, where is it? Device manager. And we still have a bunch of drivers that have to be installed. Windows Update will take care of most of that for us. And I'm just kind of curious if we shut it down. Whew, that was a pretty quick shutdown. I'm going to power it back up. 3, 2, 1. There's the power. Let's see how long it takes to boot back into Windows. And again, without any drivers, because when we add the drivers, it'll be faster. But that's nothing to shake a stick at. I'm pretty happy with it. Can't complain, though I still will. Let me power that back off. I'll just hit the power switch. It'll cycle down. And then we'll go back to camera 1. I guess it didn't take my power switch. Let me hit the power switch. That should cycle off. Okay, so any final questions for me? I'll take those right now. In the meantime, I'm going to give a shout out and say thank you to everybody who's contributed during today's live stream. Thanks to all my moderators for keeping it civil in the chat room today. 1,357 people are watching live around the world right now. Thanks you guys for tuning in. And a shout out again to Mario Elliot Fleming, Rusty Nail, Richard Sobolewski, Patricia Runyon, Mike Dale, Mario again, Spiros Z, Michael Dane, Hugh Wong, Samuel Ramos, Mike Dale, Johnny Zeimer, Thomas Robinson, Dale Maluk, Rick Lakes, Joe Dunderdale, Digger, Mike Dale again, thank you Mike, Rick Hubbard, Joseph Hawkins, Sharon Idle, Armando Garcia, Ferris Alamay, Justin Havu, Chris Mahoney, Raymond Brusayas, Mats Carlson, Simpletech, Rudiger Luthi, JC, Mark Stevens, David Anderson, Justin Havu again, Jason Baum, It's Tech Time, Ryan Farmer with that 50-pound contribution. Thank you so much, Ryan. Jeremy Kramer, and of course, our good friend and first contributor during today's live broadcast, John Wilson. Thanks you guys so much for keeping me sponsor free here on the channel. And 3Jersey24 has contributed $4.99. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody else who is kind and supportive in the chat room. I appreciate that. Just looking for any final questions before I wrap up. Anything technical that I know an answer to? Bill Chandler says, variation on your PC building. Did you notice that as you suggested alternatives of lower priced PCs, that off-lease builds by Amazon have started to offer new solid-state drives? Yeah, they started doing that a few months ago. Solid-state drive prices have come down significantly. Stealth Mode has contributed $10. He says, thank you for all the excellent insight. Right on, Stealth Mode. Well, thank you for supporting it. Sherry McFarland says, good night, Carey. Rest well. Thanks for another nice build. Hey, thank you, Sherry. You know, if you feel like making a thumbnail for this build video, that would be super. And if you don't, that's okay too. Sherry makes some of the thumbnails you'll see in some of my videos. My PC is not turning on. Can you help me? I cannot, but there's a free technical support website called techguy.org. And if you go to techguy.org, there are folks there that will be more than happy to help you with that. Paul says, thanks for the entertainment, Carey. Hey, Paul, thanks for joining me. All right. nice and quiet in the chat here, so I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Guys, thanks so much once again. I will see you all very, very soon. And until then, bye for now.